Welcome back, and a very, very heartfelt welcome to a friend and colleague of many years, Dr. Scott Powell. He is a senior fellow of the Discovery Institute and the author of a number of books, including Covert Cadre and most recently, Rediscovering America. It's good to have him with us. Welcome, Scott.
Frank, it's a pleasure to be with you and your audience.
Well, the pleasure's mine, and I wanted to ask you to talk about something that's weighing on me a lot, and I think on a lot of our audience as well, and that is the growing evidence that what we are confronting in our own country, domestically, our policies here, as well as foreign policies, certainly seems as though it's a, well, wrecking operation on the part of the Biden administration. I'm mindful of a number of different examples of it, ranging from Afghanistan to the border to inflation and the de dollarization initiatives underway at the moment, as well as not least what's happening in Ukraine and also what's in prospect with respect to Iran. You've studied these internal foes for a long time, Scott, notably in your book, Covert Cadre. Um, is that operating here, would you say, a kind of Marxist ideological determination to take down our country?
It's probably the most plausible explanation, Frank.
Well, I was afraid you'd say that. um, the other explanations for it, I guess, are simple incompetence or senility of the president himself. But obviously, something more.
Well, we just celebrated President's Day last month, and both Washington and Lincoln warned us that should America fail or America fall, it would not be the result of a foreign invasion, but rather it would be from an internal failure. And I think we are seeing an internal failure, the likes of which we really haven't seen before. So there has to be an explanation for it. And I do think that there's an ideological explanation, and then there's the human there's the carrying out. But it is almost impossible to think that we would have all of these failures really of policy and not have a plausible behind the scenes explanation, because it's not, we don't, no one's saying why this is happening, but
Well,
it's happening right before our very eyes.
it certainly is, and it certainly seems to be intensifying rather than getting better as people like us are beginning to point out in earnest that something is seriously wrong. And I think a lot of Americans, again, have a gut feeling that that's the case, but aren't able to put their finger on why. Scott, you mentioned two of our most illustrious presidents. I know that a big part of your analysis in Rediscovering America is to draw on their experiences and the most important holidays of our country to both take inspiration for how great a country this is and why we don't want to lose it to enemies, well, foreign as well as domestic. Give us sort of a flavor of the main thrust of your findings in this regard.
Well, there's been no country in human history like America. There have been other states of cultural achievement, virtue, and efflorescence. Countries that come to mind, or city states that come to mind, would include Athens under Pericles, Florence under the Medicis, Britain under Elizabeth and Shakespeare's time. These were clearly nation states, city states of virtue, but none of them were formed as America was. America is the first and really only country in human history that was founded on ideas and principles. And those ideas and principles were expressed in the Declaration of Independence. So this is very powerful. We have a very powerful nation because of those ideas. And to the extent we lose our connection with those ideas, or we don't carry those ideas out in everything, both domestic policy and foreign policy, then we lose the moral power of our nation. And that's what's happening right now. We have lost our moral power because we've departed from the principles of our founding.
I think it's fair to say, Scott, and again, you have studied this closely, notably back during the Cold War when you documented an outfit called the Institute for Policy Studies, beavering away at sort of advancing this Marxist agenda. It's, as the communists used to say, no accident, comrade, is it, that we've seen this kind of deviation from our principles, our founding ideals and virtues? It's part of the takedown, is it not? That these,
It's part
well,
of the
Marxists,
takedown.
for
Really,
want of a
the
better
Great
term, are
Reset.
trying to wean us from all of that.
Absolutely. The so-called Great Reset is really the great takedown of America.
Right.
And
And the
really
Great
the
Reset,
origins
Scott,
of this,
yeah, go ahead.
yes, the origins of this could be traced, of course, back to Marx and the philosophers that he drew from, Hegel and others. But really the momentum for this takedown of Western civilization in the United States really started in the 1930s with the Frankfurt School of Marxism, which came out of Nazi Germany. These scholars came to the United States. They sort of ensconced themselves at Columbia and spread out from there. But they recognized these were social psychologists. These were not traditional Marxist economists. They were social psychologists for the most part. Theodore Adorno, Herbert Marcuse, and others. And they understood that the way to take down the Western Civ, the United States, would be to move, to work through the cultural institutions. Those would be the universities, the education, the media, the cultural institutions. So there's been a long march through those institutions.
Right.
And that was also, this cultural thrust of Marxism was also, has its origins with Antonio Gramsci, who founded the Italian Communist Party. And this is really the best explanation for how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, and as you say, they set up shop in Columbia University, actually in the teachers' college, as I recall, there, and they spread
That
out through academia to march through the institutions, starting, as you say, in the universities and now down to the grade school levels. And as you look at this sort of unbroken march through our institutions, Scott Powell, what is it that has proven to be the most effective antidote to it? Is there any that we can sort of rally around to try to prevent ultimately the object of the exercise, which is the takedown of our country?
Well, our really our founding principles are the most powerful, and they all come out of Judeo Christianity. We were founded by very wise Christian men. We call them the founding fathers. And they understood the very principles of our Declaration and our Constitution are based on equality and those unalienable natural rights of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, but also a recognition in the case of the founding of the country that people are justified in revolting and rebelling against unjust rule. And so there was a moral basis for the revolution of the United States, actually, because we were moving to a higher level, if you will, a more moral society than what we were trying to break away from.
Well, let me ask you, Scott, we've only got 2 minutes left. Map out for us what, in light of these efforts to essentially fundamentally transform our country, as Barack Obama used to say, or simply take it out, as the Chinese communists and their United Front work department operations, including those inside our own country, clearly seek to do. What is your recommendation in terms of how we can apply these founding principles and virtues to defeat such enemies within and save our country?
Well, we're passing through this time, I believe, this dark period uh, in and the positive side of it is that there's a great awakening going on. People are seeing right before their very eyes that when we depart from these principles that protect us, that guide and lead and protect us, that we get into very serious trouble. I mean, we have division on all sides, and it's always been the Marxist strategy to first demoralize society and then to divide society. So we are and then to bring about destabilization and ultimately a crisis that could bring the target society down. And we are somewhere between the destabilization and the crisis stage. One could argue that we're well in a crisis right now.
So that's a diagnosis of the problem, and I guess the answer is that we need to get back to first principles, back to rediscovering America, as you put it in your book, and to the principles that have served us so well over so many years. If we do that, I think we'll be okay. Next up, Bradley Thayer on the Chinese communist threat.